In the year 2419, the United Terran Federation stretched across more than 50 star systems, a network of thriving human colonies built over centuries of peace and progress. The people of Earth had grown used to comfort and stability, and while the memory of old wars still existed in history books, most believed such days were far behind. Trade ships moved freely, colonies shared technology, and the once feared military fleets had been scaled down, replaced by diplomacy and treaties signed with alien species. Then, without warning, something changed. One by one, the outer colonies went silent. It began with the loss of contact from a small mining world in Sector 9. Then a deep space research station stopped transmitting. First, the Federation believed it was a technical issue, a malfunction in the CUM relays, or solar storms disrupting signals. But when emergency beacons started to flicker, sending brief, garbled messages of fire and screaming before vanishing completely, the truth became harder to deny. Reconnaissance ships were dispatched to investigate, but what they found chilled every crew member to the core. Colonies that had once been full of life were now lifeless husks, their cities reduced to blackened ruins, and their people gone. Planets were scarred by deep craters, orbital habitats shattered into drifting metal, and space stations left to spin silently in the void. Billions of human lives had vanished in what seemed to be coordinated strikes. But there were no messages from the attackers, no signs of surrender. No warnings, just silence after the fire. The enemy, whoever or whatever they were, had not come for territory or negotiation. They came to erase. The speed and precision of the attacks suggested advanced intelligence and preparation. As if this mysterious force had studied human weaknesses and waited for the perfect moment to strike. Humanity, spread thin across the stars, had grown too comfortable. Colonies were designed for peace, not war. Defense systems were outdated, military fleets were small and scattered, and central command structures had grown slow with politics. On Earth, fear spread like wildfire. People watched the news in silence, trying to understand how colonies that had taken generations to build could fall in just days. Memorials were held, but there were no bodies to bury, only images of smoke and destruction. The Federation Council, seated in the heart of Earth's orbit, was thrown into chaos. Leaders argued about the cause. Some claimed it was a rogue alien species. Others feared an internal rebellion. Some still clung to the hope that this was all a mistake or an accident. But others, those who remembered the darker times of human history, saw it for what it was. A war already underway. And yet the Galactic Assembly, council of alien civilizations that had once promised to preserve peace across the galaxy, did nothing. They sent messages of sorrow and sympathy, but refused to act, hidden behind their non-intervention laws. They watched as humanity suffered. Unwilling to break their silence, within the Federation's high command, fear began to turn into quiet fury. Old contingency plans, long buried beneath layers of peacekeeping policies, were quietly unlocked. Deep in Earth's crust, and hidden behind asteroid fields, ancient bunkers and forgotten military vaults came back to life.
Out, warning lights flickered.
On in abandoned control rooms, backup power systems buzzed awake, and long-dormant AI systems began to scan the stars again. The Federation's peaceful leaders may have hesitated, but there were still those who had prepared for this moment. Veterans, engineers and commanders who had spent their lives training for a war they hoped would never come. They knew that when diplomacy failed and allies vanished, humanity could only rely on itself. They also knew that in times of great darkness, something deep within the human spirit always stirred. In those secret places, where the public could not see, a quiet awakening had begun. Codenamed Revenant Protocol, this emergency plan was designed not just to defend Earth, but to fight back with everything humanity had ever built for war. Ships that hadn't flown in centuries would rise again. Commanders thought too old or too dangerous to lead would be called back, and the dreams of peaceful expansion would be replaced with a new purpose: survival through strength. Earth was not ready for war, not yet. But the fire had lit something inside its people. For the first time in over 100 years, the question was no longer what do we do? It was when do we strike? Though fear still hung heavy in the air, and millions mourned the fallen, a different kind of silence began to grow, one made of determination, not despair. Humanity had been caught off guard, yes. But history had shown time and time again that when backed into a corner, humans did not crumble. They adapted, they built, they fought, and they rose. Whoever had started this war believed Earth would break under the first blow. But they had made a mistake. They had stirred the giants. And now, from the shadows of forgotten bases and the minds of those who remembered what it meant to fight, humanity's answer was being forged not in words, but in steel, fire, and purpose. High above Earth, suspended in the silent dark of geostationary orbit, a forgotten structure stirred after 1.5 centuries of sleep. Codenamed Black Forge, the space yard had once been the heart of humanity's war industry. A place where massive starships were born, armored and armed for the greatest conflicts in human history. Over time, it had been sealed away, declared unnecessary in a new era of peace. Its systems went offline, its massive bays emptied, and its engineers reassigned. But now, for the first time in 150 years, Black Forge came back to life. Red warning lights pulsed through dusty corridors, old command terminals blinked awake, and ancient metal doors groaned open with mechanical sighs. Archival A as once declared. Too unstable for PCR operations, reactivated and began running diagnostics on forgotten systems. Alarms echoed softly as repair drones, long powered down, crawled from maintenance walls and began scanning the structure. Even the hull itself groaned like something alive, responding to power surging through old circuits. It was as if the very bones of the space yard remembered war and were eager to serve once again. On the command deck of the Federation's High Command, one name appeared on every encrypted screen, Admiral Soraya Voss. She had once been a symbol of courage during the last interstellar war, a brilliant tactician with a calm mind and a sharp instinct for survival. After the war, she chose a quieter life, becoming a military historian, writing books about battles no one wanted to remember anymore. But with the recent destruction of Earth's outer colonies, the Federation had no choice but to bring her back. She was reinstated not just with a uniform but with authority. With it, she was handed something few even knew existed: Project Revenant. This top-secret protocol was designed to awaken humanity's most dangerous assets, if a threat ever rose that conventional forces couldn't face. It was never meant to be used lightly. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden from sensors and long erased from public records, lay a graveyard of titanic warships. Not just any ships, but Revenant-class dreadnoughts. Each one built with terrifying power and old technologies that modern science had tried to forget. These were ships forged in the time when humanity didn't just fight aliens, they fought gods, ancient empires, and forces that tore apart stars. Now, that forgotten fleet was waking up. Voss boarded a fast cruiser and made her way to Black Forge, where she was greeted by rows of restored consoles and newly arrived engineers. Young, talented, but untested. They had studied war in theory, not in blood. They looked at Voss with a mix of awe and nervousness. She wasted no time. With quiet authority, she ordered all production lines restarted. Materials began arriving from nearby space stations and asteroid mines. Black Forge's once silent bays now hummed with the sound of machines shaping steel and assembling components. Large robotic arms fitted armor plates to the sleeping giants, while technicians ran tests on gravity engines and deep-core power systems. Among the fleet in the asteroid belt was one ship unlike the others, a vessel so powerful and legendary that even those born after the war whispered its name, the Immortal. It was the largest and oldest of the Revenants, its hull marked with the scars of ancient battles, systems designed with both brute force logic and deep, unpredictable AI thinking. While newer ships had been built with sleek designs and peaceful functions, the Immortal was made for one purpose: survival through dominance. As the work continued, Voss sent quiet signals to retired officers and forgotten veterans, those who had once stood at the edge of extinction and come back stronger. Some came in silence, others arrived in old ships that hadn't flown in years, and a few came walking with limps and scars, but still with fire in their eyes. And alongside them, cadets fresh from the academies volunteered for assignment. They had seen the destruction of Earth's colonies and wanted to fight. Slowly, room by room, Black Forge began to fill with life again, not just machines, but people with a purpose. Training began at once. Simulations were run day and night. Command crews studied old strategies. Technicians worked without sleep. To bring the old warships online, there was no time to wait, no more safety and delay. The enemy was out there, quiet for now, but no doubt preparing to strike again. Boss knew they had to strike first. Once the Immortal's main core came online, its sensors spread across space like a hunting wolf sniffing for prey. Its internal voice, part human, part A, I spoke only once. Command accepted. Standing by. At that same moment, Voss stood before the central command hub of Black Forge and ordered a transmission to be sent across known space. The message was short, but every word was heavy. Translated into every major alien language, it read, "You attacked our homes. You erased our people. You thought we would hide. But we remember we are coming. Prepare yourselves." Within hours, news spread across the stars. Allies and enemies alike listened. Some feared it. Others smiled. The humans had awakened their old machines. More than that, they had awakened themselves. No longer victims. No longer scattered. Earth had stopped mourning. Now it was building. The galaxy, once indifferent to their pain, would soon remember why humanity had once been feared. The Vectrani Ascendancy had studied humanity for years before launching their attack. From their distant systems of light and crystal, they watched Earth grow soft and slow under peace. They saw humans speak more of trade than war, more of unity than defense, and believed them unprepared for true conflict. They saw peace as weakness. And so they struck hard and fast, wiping out colonies and silencing worlds before anyone could fight back. But in their careful planning, the Vectrani made a mistake that had cost empires before them. They underestimated the human instinct to survive. They did not understand what it meant for a species to be cornered with nothing left to lose. When the first counterstrike was launched, it did not come with words or warning, but with fury born from silence and loss. The Federation chose Aegis 4 as their first target. A once thriving mining colony turned into a Vectrani forward base after the initial invasion. What once held millions of humans now served as a refueling station for the enemy, filled with strange towers of living crystal and guarded by fleets shaped like shards of light. But this time, the Vectrani would not face researchers or farmers. They would face the oldest parts of humanity's war, machine brought back to life, stronger than ever. At dawn cycle, 3 warships emerged from the black edge of the system. They did not blink into place like graceful alien craft. They arrived like falling mountains. Each was a Revenant-class vessel, dark and massive, with hulls thick enough to withstand direct orbital fire. In their lead was the Immortal, its name burned into the side of its armored skin, its engines glowing like the heart of a dying star. The ship was more than just metal and coated, was a memory of old wars made solid again. Behind it, Resolute and Hammerfall, equally powerful, spread out in a tactical arc. The Vectrani fleet responded quickly, sending out sleek interceptors with crystal cannons and beam weapons designed for speed and precision. But the Revenant ships were not built for dancing around targets. They were built to break them. With a low, steady roar, railguns fired rounds the size of cargo containers, each strike tearing holes through enemy ships that shimmered and shattered like glass. Kinetic missiles, not smart or elegant but devastating, pierced Vectrani shields that had never faced such brutal force. Where alien ships flickered and spun in complex formations, human vessels advanced in slow, unstoppable lines, taking damage but never stopping. Even when their armor cracked and systems flared, they moved forward. Bleeding fire but still firing back. Within hours, the skies above Aegis 4 turned from crystal blue to dark gray. Explosions echoed through the atmosphere as falling debris, lit up the upper layers of the sky. On the surface, special operations teams deployed from drop pods, striking key points with precision. Each team was made up of veterans and young soldiers working together, fighting side by side in the ruins of what was once their home. The Vectrani ground forces, used to fear and surrender, were caught off guard by the sudden strength and coordination of the assault. Human boots walked once again on Aegis soil, not as victims, but as victors. In 7 relentless hours, the battle was over. Enemy fleet had been reduced to drifting fragments, the base destroyed, and the planet reclaimed. It was not just a military victory, it was a message. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than any official statement. Civilizations that had turned their eyes away from Earth began to whisper its name again, not with pity, but with surprise, and for some, with a spark of hope. Refugee races, once scattered and hiding from the same enemy, now saw something they had not seen in decades, a force that could fight back. Earth, thought to be quiet and broken, had struck its first blow, and it was not a gentle one. For the first time since the invasion began, the Vectrani retreated. They had expected resistance, but not this kind, not the kind that burned bright and loud and refused to die. Now realized they had awakened something ancient and dangerous in the humans, not just a military, but a memory of who they were when challenged. Back aboard, the immortal Admiral Soraya Voss stood on the observation deck, watching the surface of Aegis 4 grow larger below. Her eyes, hardened by war and sorrow, remained steady. She gave no speeches, no celebration. There was still much to do. The war was not over, but the first crack had appeared in the enemy's perfect wall. One world reclaimed, 1,000 more. To go behind her, officers studied damage reports and rearmament schedules. Young pilots returned from their first real combat, faces pale, but eyes shining with something new. Veterans, once forgotten, now stood among them as teachers and leaders. Somewhere in the mess hall, someone played an old Earth song. On a small speaker, it didn't match the high-tech silence of the ship, but no one stopped it. Let it play, Voss thought. Let the galaxy hear it. The enemy had brought war to their door. Now humanity was bringing it back louder, stronger, and without apology. Lightless Reach was not a place ships went by accident. It was a dangerous region of twisted space and ancient gravity wells, circling a collapsed star whose dying light had once torn holes in nearby systems. Gravity there did not follow the usual rules. Navigation was unstable, communications were weak, and energy signatures often vanished before reaching the edge. For centuries, it had remained untouched, feared even by the boldest explorers. Now, it was the center of the largest Vectrani fleet ever assembled, dozens of warships in formation, cloaked among the debris fields and warped shadows of the region, waiting. It was a trap, carefully designed to appear as an opening, a mistake, a crack in their defenses. The Vectrani knew Earth would strike again, and they meant to break them in one swift blow, far from home, far from reinforcements. But Admiral Soraya Voss was no stranger to traps. She studied the fleet arrangement, the signal patterns, the strange silence around Lightless Reach, and saw the bait for what it was. Instead of avoiding it, she gave the order to prepare for immediate deployment. The human fleet would go, in not blindly, but ready to turn the enemy's own trap into a battlefield of their choosing. Inside the Immortal, the crew worked with tight focus, running drills, loading weapons, and checking systems 3 times over. The warship moved slowly toward the edge of Lightless Reach, flanked by Hammerfall, Resolute, and 3 newer ships brought online just days before. These vessels were not polished or perfect, but they were built with speed and power in mind. Combining old tech with new innovations from Earth's reactivated military science divisions. Among them were experimental stealth modules, signal disruptors, and AI-assisted targeting systems. The Federation knew it couldn't match the Vectranian numbers or elegance, but it didn't need to. Humanity's strength had always been its unpredictability, and this battle would prove it again. As they entered the dead zone, the stars vanished behind dark clouds of radiation and debris. The ships went quiet, lights dimmed, heat signatures reduced. Voss's plan had already begun, not with an attack, but with misdirection. Small drone clusters scattered in every direction, some mimicking the energy patterns of larger ships, others broadcasting false fleet positions to confuse the enemy. When the first shots were fired, they came not from the human fleet, but from the Vectrani, who believed they had caught their prey exposed. Their ships moved like beams of light, fast and elegant, curving through space as if dancing through water. But this time, they were not attacking frightened colonists or unprepared defenders. They were attacking soldiers ready for war. As soon as the first wave came close, hidden drop pods launched from the Immortal's belly, streaking through the chaos of the battlefield and crashing onto the hulls of enemy carriers. Each pod opened like a mechanical flower, revealing small strike teams armed with magnetic boots, pulse rifles, and battlefield hacking gear. They didn't try to destroy the ships. They disabled them from within, shutting down engines, scrambling targeting systems, and planting explosives in core systems before disappearing into space again. At the same time, human cyber units aboard, Hammerfall initiated deep hacks into the Vectrani hive network, using old Earth code that didn't follow the usual encryption logic. Entire enemy squadrons suddenly lost contact with their command centers, drifting in confusion as orders were cut and responses delayed. Meanwhile, the A's once locked away due to fears of rebellion were now fighting alongside their human creators, each one assigned to assist in real-time tactical decisions. These A's had names, voices, and memories. They were relics of past wars, bound by loyalty to their creators, and now eager to serve once again. One AI known as Halberd coordinated 3 simultaneous flanking maneuvers while also calculating enemy jump pads within the gravity field, warning pilots of hidden threats before they could be ambushed. Another Astra controlled all ship queues, communications, keeping coordination tight, even as the storm of battle tore across space. It was not a clean fight. It was brutal, chaotic, and costly. Human ships were hit. Some exploded in silence, their crews lost in moments. Others fought through flames, patched systems mid-battle, and returned fire twice as hard. Young officers gave their lives to hold critical positions. Veterans took control of damaged ships and rammed them into enemy vessels when no other choice remained. It was a war of grit versus grace. One side refined and ancient, the other stubborn and unyielding. And slowly, the tide began to turn. By the 5th hour, Vectrani formations broke apart, their command fleet crippled and their backup systems overwhelmed. A final wave of revenant ships arrived from a hidden vector, having waited in a cloaked state behind a nearby asteroid cluster. With them came reinforcements from a rising coalition of alien species races that had once feared the Vectrani, but now saw Earth as a symbol of resistance. Together, they delivered the final strike. The Vectrani, shocked by the scale and strategy of the response, were forced to retreat into deep space, their numbers cut in half, their pride broken. When the dust settled, space was littered with wreckage, flickering debris fields, and the quiet bodies of brave soldiers who had given everything. But in that silence, a signal was sent, one not meant as a threat, but as a reminder. We remember our past. We built war for peace. You made us choose war again. The message was transmitted not just to the enemy, but to every listening world, every watching eye, every voice that had doubted humanity's strength. Earth had not just survived, it had fought, adapted, and won a battle thought impossible in the dark silence of deep space. After the flames of battle had faded and the broken pieces of the Vectrani fleet drifted across the stars, a strange, quiet return, but it was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of decisions being made. With their armada shattered and their forward bases destroyed, the once feared Vectrani ascendancy realized they had pushed too far, too fast. Their pride had led them to believe that humanity was soft, that Earth's years of peace had made them forget how to resist, how to fight, how to rise. But now, with their core systems exposed and fear echoing in their command halls, they chose to reach out not directly, but through intermediaries, neutral alien envoys from the Galactic Assembly. A message was delivered to Earth, quiet and Formal, asking for a ceasefire. It was not an apology. It was not surrender. It was survival, dressed in polite words. But Earth did not answer not right away. No speeches were given, no promises made behind closed doors. Instead, Admiral Soraya Voss, now the voice of a united human defense, stood on the bridge of the Immortal and sent a single broadcast clear, unencrypted, and meant for the entire galaxy to hear. We were explorers once, dreamers, builders, but we were never weak. You thought we had forgotten who we were? Now the giants walk again. We will not sleep until every child we lost is avenged. The message echoed across star systems. Satellites replayed it on every human world, and even in alien territories where Earth's name had once been spoken only in whispers, now it rang like thunder. It was not a threat, it was a statement, a promise, a truth. Across the shattered colonies that had once been symbols of peace, rebuilding began not slowly, not with fear, but with purpose. Aegis 4, once burned and lost, now stood as a center of coordination. Its skies filled with transport ships carrying supplies, engineers, and soldiers. Old outposts were reborn with stronger walls, clearer defenses, and new leadership. But this time, they were not alone. Races who had once bowed beneath Vectronic control traders, refugees, scientists, entire civilizations now reached out to Earth. Not just with gratitude, but with offers. They asked to join, to help, to build something better. For the first time in generations, the galaxy saw something new. A coalition not of control, but of shared pain, shared strength, and shared purpose, led by humanity, forged in war, and built on memory. Admiral Voss moved from battlefield to rebuilding center, offering both leadership and warning. She reminded every new ally that peace was a goal, but never a guarantee. Humanity would never again trade its defense for comfort. Around her, others rose on commanders who had earned their place in the heat of battle, engineers who had brought old systems back to life, scientists who now merged alien technology with human design to create new tools for a safer galaxy. But the true awakening was not in ships or weapons. It was in the people. On every world touched by the war, statues began to rise, not of generals or admirals, but of workers, of families, of unity. The giants, people now said, were not just war machines hidden in asteroid fields or dreadnoughts drifting through space. The giants were ideas, strength in the face of fear, unity over division, memory over ignorance. Earth had not built this movement alone, but it had sparked it. The Immortal, now fully repaired and upgraded, no longer hid in shadows. It became a symbol, a ship that moved not as a warning, but as a guardian, escorted by allied vessels from species once scattered and scared. In council meetings across space, human representatives stood not with arrogance, but with history behind them. They did not ask for dominance. They asked for balance, for systems where no one would again be left to burn alone. Even the Galactic Assembly, once silent during the first attacks, began to shift. Policies were challenged, laws were rewritten, and while the Vectrani now retreated into their borders, licking their wounds and adjusting their future plans, they did so with caution. In their hearts, they had met the new Earth and they would not forget it, not because of firepower, but because of resolve. The humans had remembered who they were. The galaxy would not be the same again. On Earth, memorials were completed for the fallen. Not just for soldiers, but for entire colonies lost before the Awakening. Names were carved into crystal walls that glowed softly at night, reminders of both tragedy and transformation. Children who had grown up during the war now learned the truth, not just of loss, but of survival. And in every lesson they were told, we do not forget, we do not break. And when needed, we rise. The old stories of Earth's past once, buried in peace, were now passed on again, not to glorify war, but to honor the price of peace. Somewhere in the stars, more challenges would come, new threats would rise. But this time, humanity would not wait to be attacked. It would stand at the edge, eyes open, ready, and as the Immortal moved through space, a quiet signal pulsed from its corn, a battle call, not a code of war, but a heartbeat. The sound of something old, strong, and fully awake.